I have made my triumphant return from YCS Atlanta! Well, actually, I came back like Monday night, but I spent most of yesterday recovering from the trip. Those of you who have traveled to big tournaments like this probably know what I'm talking about. Before we get into this week's Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, I will talk about my experience at YCS Atlanta. I'm sure you're all dying to hear about it. Or you're not, in which case it's my video, we talk about what I want. Also, all the pictures I'll have in this video was from the deck I used. If you couldn't tell, I went with Pendulum Magician, because even though I consider myself predominantly at the moment a Thunder Dragon player, I mostly use Pure because I don't want to pay for dangers, and I couldn't get Pure to a consistent place enough where I felt like I could reliably bring it. And also, the other deck I own is Salamangreat, and I actually never brought Salamangreat to a local, and I'm not the kind of person who's comfortable, no matter how simple a deck seems to be, I'm not comfortable going into a huge event like this with a deck I've never tested before. So yeah, I just decided to go with the most consistent thing I knew that had the most amount of power. I do know a couple pure Thunder Dragon decks, and also a couple Chaos Thunder Dragon decks were in Top Cut. I haven't had a chance to look at those builds yet, but I do want to check them out, and I do want to test them for myself. I'm probably never going to spend the money on dangers. As for Salamangreats, yeah, I'll try and get to those when I can. But all in all, Pendulum Magician actually worked pretty well for me. In the main event, my personal record was 4-3. My only losses was to weird stuff I'd never seen before, like Layer of Darkness and Orchist and some other third thing. Considering Pendulum Magician is a tier 2 deck, I don't think going 4-3 is that bad, considering I plowed through Salamangreat. Oh god, that sounds dirtier than I meant it. Everyone we met was extremely nice, and that brings me to what is, in my opinion, the best aspect of YCS Atlanta, and that is just how much of a fun time everyone had. Like, seriously, everyone we met, everyone we talked to, every person we played was having a ball. Team format went over amazingly, especially because Friday, like when we were doing the pre-registration, a lot of people were really trepidatious going into this event. Now, as many of you may have heard, the event got an amazing turnout, 1,600 some people, the biggest YCS Atlanta ever, which is cool, but a lot of people seem to want to go to say that they did the Team YCS, not the first Team YCS. A lot of people thought this would fail miserably and be a one and done, and I'm not gonna lie, even though I was pretty excited about it when they announced it, it's Konami, guys. We can't really trust these guys. Especially because my last YCS was YCS New Jersey, which was the testing ground for the new time rules, and that just went over horribly. So we all expected this to go over pretty bad. A lot of people, even going into Saturday, were still not very clear about how exactly team interaction was going to work. I knew some people who weren't even sure if you would play a match or just one game. Like, yeah, I think the communication from Konami about how this was going to work could have been a lot better. But as far as the event went, everyone just had a ton of fun. Like, me and my team, it was one guy from my locals, and unfortunately the other people we were going with had issues and couldn't make it. So we hooked up with a third guy there, real nice guy. And we all just had a great time together. Like, the way interactions change when you sort of have to force yourself to be social. This is why I'm always talking about why locals is important, why using card games as a people experience is a good thing. It's because you have that level of social interaction, you meet people, you talk to people, and this kind of took it to the next level because now you had to put your faith in people. You had to trust people to succeed, to do well on their own, and it seemed like everyone responded really positively to it. Everyone we talked to was having fun, all our matches were lighthearted. Granted, again, we were in lower tables for most of the event, so obviously we were never in really any high stakes matches, but just everyone was talking, everyone was joking. Like, a lot of times if one match finished, we would just watch the other people, not to like coach or anything, just to spectate. Now, obviously, lower tables, of course, means more random decks, so a lot of people didn't really know how their partners' decks worked, but there was a couple points where we would all just chip in to clarify rulings and all help out, and it was just a really enjoyable experience, and everyone loved it. I got a chance to talk to Tyrell from Team APS for a little bit. Hit me up, guys. And he seemed to really like it too, and he shared my sentiment of at first thinking this really wasn't going to work, but everyone had a good time. Everyone had fun, and the team names were awesome. My team was Team Randos, because when you're a Pendulum player, a Trickstar Mech Knight player, and a Necros player, what else are you going to call yourselves? So in all, this was really fun, and I hope Konami does another one as soon as possible. So anyways, on to this week's Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. I actually like this. Yeah, I won't lie. As many of you know, I don't like Soul Burner. I think the character has not been used effectively, and I don't like how the character's been basically shoved down our throats. But this was weirdly interesting, and for reasons I wasn't quite expecting. So basically, he went up against Bowman. I think the episode took a little bit long to get going. But first up, let's talk about that opening. Like, just lightning, just kicking Yusaku. Stuff like that is honestly a lot of times a lot more effective than a giant monster crushing somebody, because like that is something you could really see happening. Someone just getting kicked while they're down, tortured, hurt, especially after everything Yusaku went through in the last episode. Was I the only one who noticed that when Yusaku said previously on Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains at the beginning, he had this much more sadder emotional tone to it? I don't know if that was me, I don't know if that was intentional, or if that was the actor's choice, but it really set the stage for what was to come. And so I just like that bit. And also something interesting, Bowman was the one who told Lightning to stop. It wasn't Soulverner's provocation, it wasn't wondering what Revolver's doing. It was Bowman saying, come on, man, give the guy a break. Like, wait for him to come up. It's an interesting aspect that Bowman is developing a moral code. He is developing a sense of right and wrong that doesn't necessarily line up with Lightning's. Maybe that'll come into play a little bit later. Or maybe it won't, who knows. So then after that, they decide to leave Yusaku alone. This is where much of the weirder fan art of the anime begins, with someone unconscious and vulnerable, but that did not happen. And so then we move on to Revolver's crew hacking in, which is neat. We'll see where that goes. I mean, look, Revolver is interesting as fuck to watch duel, so that'll be a fun one. And then we get on to, Soulburner encountering Bowman. And I thought this actually was a lot more interesting than it logically should have been, if that made sense. Soulburner is a very generic, uninteresting character, but what was sort of interesting here was that Soulburner's morals and his sort of basis of right and wrong has been sort of established. It's kind of based on his ability to idolize and put faith in people. His faith he had in Go, his faith he had in Aoi, and his faith he had in Playmaker. And seeing Playmaker basically be mentally destroyed and tortured by someone he doesn't like anyways sets him off. And even though I thought the whole flames around him at all time was a little goofy, I thought that this was sort of an interesting concept of him being set off like this. We see this guy get angry a lot. We see that he can be short-tempered fairly often, but it's sort of been this aspect going on throughout the show that he's been trying to think more logically. He's been trying to have more of a reason to it. This time, he is just all anger the whole duel, and visually, it's kind of interesting too. I don't like Soulburner. I feel bad kicking him in the teeth, because I did really like the way he was handled in this, but when you see Soulburner when he's angry in this, he doesn't look very heroic. He doesn't really look cool. He looks like what he is, a raging ball of fire. And what makes this interesting is when it's contrasted to Bowman, who was that, who was just kind of this crazy, angry, unstable dude, and has now sort of turned into this frighteningly logical being. And that is also, to me, very interesting. The way he sort of predicts Soulburner's emotions, the way he kind of explains away everything, I find interesting. He just has this logical answer to everything, and how it only sets Soulburner off more. That, to me, is interesting. That idea of relying on a character's morals, and you have that on both sides. Soulburner obviously has a very strict code, and Bowman is developing a very strict code. Both believe what they're doing is the right thing, but it's how they rationalize it that makes it interesting. Bowman has rationalized everything as the AIs are above everything. They have an obligation to steer the world in the right direction and to run it. And because of this, everything is on the table. That means killing, we'll just use the term killing Aoi and Aqua, tempting Soulburner, going along with Lightning, but to a point, which could be an interesting thing in the future. So that was all in all really good. The duel was sort of fun. I like the idea that Salamangreat now has a field spell that is mostly useful in the mirror match. Oh lord, that's going to be annoying. But also, like, I like the sort of callback to the fact that he's taken over Aqua, and like, it's in a water setting as he shows off his new power, as he also has a sense of vanity. He also feels that desire to show you how much stronger he is than you. And I think if Soulburner loses, god, I'm going to see like such a Aoi fanboy or a Soulburner hater to a lot of people. I think if Soulburner loses, that would be really interesting. Like that idea that Aoi's high morals couldn't conquer him, Soulburner's anger couldn't conquer him. We're kind of running out of shonen cliches here. So I think that would all in all be very interesting. I am interested to see what happens next. A little more interested to see Revolver versus Lightning. But for now, yeah, I found this interesting, and I definitely want to see what happens next. Now, as for the TCG question of the week, Infinity Chasers is coming. Is it coming this weekend? I think it's coming this weekend. It's not important. Do you care about this set? Because I feel like everything in it has that sort of good ... going on. Like, the Spellcaster waifu deck is good ... It kind of doesn't really have any power of its own. Evil Eye is good ... but a bit predictable. The Tonka trucks are good ... but they just rely too much on power. Do you think this deck will be particularly good? I personally want something from this set to be good. I just kind of want a meta shakeup that isn't something that was predictable. Please, dear God. Anyway, so yeah, click to like, click to subscribe, comment about all those things below. And I swear I'm actually going to work on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains Rewrite Part 2 as soon as I'm done uploading this. I promise, guys.